let's start with some context. I have been a College Humor fan since 2013, basically as long as I've had the internet, and have watched their transitions between cast members, video styles, the BuzzFeed era, and now the age of Dropout. Dimension 20 is possibly my favorite show of all time, and their creativity and effort they put into their shows like Game Changer, Actually, and Breaking News, even the less popular ones like Total Forgiveness, is all astounding. At all times, the writers and producers of Dropout/College Humor feel like they are pushing the concepts of their show to their limits. There are a few writing teams I trust more than the ones at Dropout and College Humor. That being said, none of them are perfect, and a show based around pedantic corrections like Actually is kind of an easy target. Actually is a game show of nerdy corrections, produced by College Humor/Dropout and hosted by Mike Trapp. The show's main premise is the idea that the things that nerds like to do above anything else is correcting people. Contestants on the show are fed false statements about media spanning from comics, movies, television, and so much more, and they may interrupt at any time claiming that
Actually,
Finn is not from the land of Ood.
correct.
The show started as a brief web series in 2015 before it was picked up during the inception of Dropout and is currently on its 6th season. Actually is by far one of the most entertaining and popular shows on the streaming service, and if you haven't already watched it, I encourage you to watch the select few episodes on YouTube, and consider paying for Dropout as well. It sports a very talented and hilarious host in Michael Trapp, and is consistently having on new and always entertaining guests. And the recent addition of Michael Saltzman as the fact checker is perfect for the show, and he is already a fan and personal favorite. Well, of course this video is titled The Problem with Actually. It's a show that I've been watching since the initial web series, back when I was literally 11 years old. I hold it near and dear to my heart, and I've been watching College Humor videos since I was in 4th grade, and I've enjoyed their content and writers, even when many considered their quality declining. So, before I say anything else about the show, I'm gonna quickly list 5 things I love about the show. Number 1, I love the set design. And while very simple, there are seemingly dozens of visual gags in the background of each season, and every time I notice a new one, it makes me appreciate the set designers even more. Number 2, the guests that they bring on are fantastic, and while they may not all share the seemingly endless expanse of pop culture knowledge as some of their peers, every single guest brought on the show is outrageously funny, and has the competitive spirit that makes a game about correcting people so fun. Number 3, Mike Trapp is and always has been hilarious, and despite running the show for 6 seasons, he feels sharp as ever. It never feels like he's tired of the show. It always seems like he's excited to share and celebrate obscure and fascinating bits of pop culture. Number 4, particularly the themed episodes are always very fun. The love-themed and wrestling-themed episodes were both great, and I'd be very interested in more episodes like the WrestleMania one. It's always so entertaining to watch people talk about things that they know and care a lot about, which is something that I'll touch on later. Number 5. Lastly, I love how many interesting and hilarious new facts that I've learned through the show. I cannot count the amount of times I've audibly exclaimed, "What?" to a piece of information presented by the show, and how often that I share these bits of lore to my friends and family. Okay, bonus number 6. I absolutely love the way that it interacts with its fan base, both featuring corrections made by fans on previous episodes and featuring statements submitted by fans. The show does this in a way that I've never seen any other game show do, and is something that other networks and even other Twitch and YouTube shows should take notes from. Oh, and shiny questions. Love those. Now that that's out of the way, I do have some criticisms of the show. The show stems from a premise that is both amusing and one that I've never seen put into a game before, showing off your superior knowledge of something by correcting your friends. This concept is great, and allows for not just hilarious answers and fascinating bits of trivia about pop culture, but it also displays the uniquely satisfying feeling of shouting out that, actually, characters in Dungeons & Dragons 5e can only cast one concentration spell at the same time, or whatnot. It's so fun to see people's faces light up in the middle of a statement and rapidly press their buzzer because they can finally put all of this knowledge previously thought to be useless for something important. A point. However, as the show airs its 6th season, I found that this moment that the core of the show is based off of is starting to become less and less frequent. Recently, the contestants of the show are more often than not forced to dissect each statement and wildly guess what part of the statements are false, and hope that something that they guess sticks. While there is certainly something interesting and still fun about a game centering on coming up with creative guesses that may stumble into the right answer, the moment of recognition and euphoria that is the cornerstone of the show has started to take a backseat. As the viewer, it's so much fun watching people talk about and succeed in something that they're passionate about, and I've similarly found myself yelling at my computer or phone in excitement, pressing an invisible buzzer in my hand because goddammit, I actually know this one. Some of the more recent episodes even feel like these moments are completely absent, as the players jokingly stumble their way through prompts that they have no chance of knowing the answer to. It feels like, in a small way, the show has lost track of what made it so charming and entertaining in the first place. So what changed? To me, it appears that the show currently has a greater focus on sharing obscure facts that are insane and funny to their audience, rather than putting it on the competition itself. After all, it is a comedy show. This isn't necessarily a bad thing. As I previously mentioned, these interesting tidbits are one of my favorite parts of the show. And while the show has definitely leaned into the nerd cred narrative that the show is based off in the past, the competition was never framed as that serious or prestigious. However, I think that in recent seasons, the show has leaned a little too far in the direction of impossibly difficult questions. The way that the team picks their prompts is ultimately the deciding factor between this dichotomy between
just focus on superhero stories.
Actually, you bringing GURPS into this? Actually, GURPS stands for Generic Universal Role-Playing System and can be applied to any world.
That is correct.
Although have
and this.
No one got this one then, which hurts me because this is one of the greatest theme songs ever. If I were to continue the lyrics from this point, the lyrics would be, "Believe it or not, I'm walking on air.
Okay.
I never thought I could feel so free."
Greatest American
This is the greatest
hero.
American hero. Yeah, that was just it was the second verse there.
So, what can they do about it? One possible solution is to make the competition, well, easier. Easier prompts would give the contestants a greater chance of actually answering the question. And of course, maybe a little less of Michael Trapp having to say, "I'm gonna go ahead and call this one right here," for the 10th time during the episode. But of course, this solution isn't so simple. Not only is the difficulty of prompts subjective, but when pulling from all corners of fandom, it becomes difficult, even impossible, to know what your contestants have experience with. I'm not sure, but I think I remember that the show does cater some of their source material to a list of topics the contestants have shared beforehand, but I'm not positive about that. Of course, there's no way of knowing the depth of knowledge in each of these subjects that the contestants have experience with. At the very least, I think the show should gauge the depth of knowledge that the guests have per episode a little better. And having some episodes be easier and some harder is a good way to make the viewing experience from episode to episode more diverse and distinct. The topic of difficulty brings up an important dimension of the show that I've yet to mention: the viewers. While I and many of the contestants on the show are often left scratching our heads at the obscurity of the prompts from the show, questioning how they expect anyone on Earth to know the answer, as the show grows larger and larger, it's undeniable that of the countless dedicated fans of the show, some viewer out there does. And they're losing their shit. In some ways, the show's shift towards increasingly difficult prompts caters to the more hardcore fans of each respective franchise. As the scope of the show increases, and the more fan bases the show features, the recognition that the show gives to these fans is certainly respectable. The line that actually walks is a tight one, and creating that perfect balance between making questions that both reward hardcore fans of different fandoms, showing off the excitement and familiar nerding out of the players, as well as continuing to share fascinating facts about the series that are near and dear to our hearts, seems like an impossibly tall order. But they've done it before, And even though I'm sure it will get more and more difficult as Actually writers scour the internet for more interesting and balanced questions, I know that the team is capable enough to do it again. I think that questions should be, if possible, a little easier, simply to make that classic and iconic I know it moments a little more frequent. More themed episodes would also be a great way to do this, as bringing on guests that are known to have extensive knowledge in a particular fandom solves this problem as well. One last way to fix this problem that the show is actually already doing is increasing the number of shiny questions. Overall, Actually is an amazing show and presents a concept that is unique and hilarious. And with a premise this good and cast this talented, with a few minor adjustments, I know the show is headed places. Oh, and I forgot to mention, the real life skills segment, so great, both in concept and because it's the reason I know how to jump a car correctly.